and welcome everyone. My name is JP Pitark. I am a 2025 grad of Darden. Today I work at AWS as a finance manager, and I'm glad to join us all tonight on, excuse me, at our very first event. I work with the UVA Club of Washington, D.C. in the capacity of treasurer. The UVA Clubs is a network of over 100 volunteer-led clubs around the world, and we're excited to have our first webinar tonight in partnership with NextGen Money Matters. A couple of housekeeping items to begin. The session is being recorded and will be sent to all registrants within a few days. If you have questions throughout the discussion, please feel free to drop them into the Q&A, and we'll be sure to get to them at the end of our conversation. Now I'd like to welcome Olivia Hathaway. She's the Assistant Director of NextGen Philanthropy, and she had the idea for this wonderful program tonight. She's a 2023 grad of UVA in Biochemistry and Biology, and she had the great idea to do this event because, like many of us today, she's had experience struggling with finding solid advice on managing our finances post-graduation. Olivia?
Thank you, JP. And hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming out for Money Matters for Recent Grads, Finance for Right Now. We are so excited to partner with UVA Clubs for this webinar. The NextGen team really wants to build out our programming so that there's no gap in support for our recent graduates between graduation day and their first reunion. Tonight's webinar topic is also a reflection of that. It's also partially inspired by my own experience attending out-of-touch financial webinars for young people that really just missed the mark and did nothing to alleviate my own financial worries. My favorite example of this is a webinar that suggested that I try to negotiate rent with my landlord, as if my landlord were some guy and not a holding company based in California. Tonight we're going to do better than that. So without further ado, I'd like to invite our special guest to join me. Dot Kelly is UVA's Robert B. Hardaway Jr. Lecturer in Personal Finance at the McIntire School of Commerce, where she teaches finance for non-McIntire students in her Comm 2730 class. Connor Kelly is her son and a NextGen alum who graduated with his BA in government from the college in 2019 and then his Master's of Public Policy from Batten in 2020. He now lives and works in DC, giving him an excellent perspective on the current financial realities of recent grads. Thank you both for being here tonight. Connor, take it away.
Thanks so much for the warm welcome, Olivia, and also to everyone else at UVA Clubs and NextGen for making this event a possibility and a reality. So I'm really excited to be here tonight. So when I was a student at UVA, when I knew that my mom taught personal finance class, but there's something about being late teens, early 20s, don't really want to take a class taught by your mother. But I did have a lot of friends who did take Comm 2730 with her, and they all told me that I missed out. And that it was one of the best classes that they took at UVA, and definitely one of the most applicable to their, day-to-day lives post-grad. So I'm looking to catch up. I'm really excited to hear from Professor Kelly about, what I missed at Comm 2730, what anyone else who might be joining us tonight missed if they weren't able to take your course, and then also spend some time answering some questions that we've received from alumni and other attendees. So, Professor Kelly, could you, tell me a little bit about Comm 2730? What did I miss?
I'd be delighted. Thank you for that warm welcome, Connor and Olivia and JP. I'm so happy to be here, and I want to thank everyone, all the audience, as well as all the tech support and all the staff who have helped put this together. So yeah, Comm 2730, you missed a good time, Connor. It's a 3-credit elective for non-comm students, so you were eligible. And it assumes that the students know nothing. There are no prerequisites, and we cover all the basics. We start with compounding and budgeting and taxes and credit, and then we get into investing and prioritization of investing and different asset classes. And actually, it sort of culminates with life planning. It's all culminating with the idea that you need to plan to achieve your financial goals. And the sooner you start, the better off you're going to be. My focus is always on, my real focus is on financial well-being. And I'm hoping that by teaching this course and doing these kinds of webinars, that I help students as well as alum achieve financial well-being.
And so when you focus on financial well-being, how exactly do you measure it or how do you define it?
That's a great question. So I use the definition from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and it has 4 components. The first 2 have to do with security. Do you have control over your day-to-day and month-to-month finances? And the second part of security is, do you have the capacity to absorb a financial shock? So a lot of people have, as long as they have a job, they have control over their day-to-day and month-to-month finances. But many people are living paycheck to paycheck. And as a result, they don't have that capacity to absorb a financial shock. And unfortunately, as we all know, rainy days come, emergencies happen, sickness, illness, layoffs, furloughs, government shutdowns, all these things can disrupt your cash flow and or lead to unexpected expenses. So you need that capacity to absorb a financial shock. Once you have those 2 things, you want to focus on, you want to move towards what we consider having financial freedom. So are you on track to meet your financial goals? And everyone should identify their goals. We all have different goals, and you know, you have to plan for your particular goals. And then the last thing, which is really the ultimate goal, is, do you have the freedom to make choices that allow you to enjoy life? So can you take time to, can you cut back on your hours if you need to? Can you take a trip to see your sick relative? Can you take a night, go out for a date, go out, take a small trip, whatever it is you don't want to be so regimented and obsessed that you don't have some freedom to enjoy life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that those last bits about freedom sound amazing. It sounds like something, great goal to strive for. Although
Exactly.
realistically, probably people who are, recent grads, you don't start off on third base or home. You maybe start first have to get on first. So, how do you go about what's a good like process to reliably take control of your day-to-day and month-to-month finances and being able to absorb a financial shock?
Great question. So I recommend the 20, 30, 50 budget, which is totally scalable for everyone, no matter what your income. And the idea is 20 minimum of 20% of your take-home pay, that's after taxes, goes towards your financial goals, whatever they are. Some people call that paying yourself first. I never liked that term. That struck me as someone who was raised not to, focus on my own needs, but to focus on other people's needs. I thought that was kind of egocentric. But if I focus on, okay, I am investing in myself and I'm saving for my future and saving for a rainy day, I can do it's easier for me. So you have to play whatever tape recording works for you. But I think about invest in yourself, minimum 20% towards your financial goals, whatever they are. Then no more than 50% on your necessities. That's housing, transportation, food, utilities, and insurance. And then no more than 30% on everything else. And I will tell you really, the minimum 20%. People who are very successful and financially really put as much into into their financial goals as possible. So the more you do that, especially younger, the better off you're going to be in the long run, and the more freedom you're going to have as you age. And I will tell you, as someone who's older, the freedom, because there's certain things you can't do as much when you're older, and having more financial freedom helps offset that. I can't move as fast as I used to. So it's sometimes I need to hire someone or take an Uber instead of walk as far as I used to. I used to walk really far, not so much anymore. So it pays off.
Nice.
So I have a question for you, Connor,
Yeah.
because a lot of people recognize that housing and transportation is really expensive. In fact, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics data says most of us spend 50% of our take-home pay on housing and transportation. And young people are a little higher than 50, I think. How do you find that 20, 30, 50 budget? Is that something you are able to live within or work around?
Yeah, I mean, I have been able to roughly keep those, stay within those guidelines. I'm not gonna, lie and say that it's something that is, easy, but it is definitely something that is achievable if you kind of approach it with intentionality from my perspective. So, when I first moved to DC, I knew that housing was going to be like the by far the highest line item on my budget each month, and so, I called up some of my friends who I knew we're also planning on moving up into the area, and I said, "Hey, let's pool our resources instead of all of us, acting as individuals in the rental marketplace, looking for, you know, crappy studio apartments. Maybe our dollars can, go a little bit further if we, live together." And we actually found a really nice townhome, a little bit further north, and away from a lot of the hustle and bustle of like sort of downtown DC, and got a really good deal. We were able to spend under $1,000 a month in rent. I mean, this was I'll be honest, this was right after COVID, so we had good timing. But shortly after, a few years later, we did move into another townhome. Me and four other people. I'm definitely paying less than I know a lot of people in similar positions are who are, you know, getting studio apartments. So I think that like pooling resources, living communally with roommates, cuts down on housing expenses and also utilities. And all
Mhm.
sorts of things. And it's also just nice to live with friends. It, extends that college experience a little bit longer, which we all love. In terms of transportation, I'll be honest, it's actually one of my smaller budget items because when I moved to DC, I sold my car. And that took away gasoline, took away parking, tickets, fares, like all these
Insurance?
things. And I instead I bought a bike, and then I bought an e-bike downstairs for me. In our living room. I live with five people, and we have nine bikes totally. And it serves us very well. We're able to, we don't have to pay for parking. We just keep it at our homes, and we're able to get exercise and basically get anywhere we want in the city. Either using our bikes, or if it's a little bit further, we have in DC, we're really blessed to have a great public transit system. I know this isn't the case for everyone, but it's just my experience that, being creative about, both your living situation and also how you get from place to place. If you think about it and just really try and figure out, these are going to be the two biggest line items, that can be daunting, but it can also present an opportunity that these are the areas that probably have the greatest variation and range in terms of, how much you can spend or how much you can cut if possible. But it takes effort. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, I think everything worthwhile, most everything worthwhile takes effort, and the payoff can be huge, right? Um, yeah. What about food? How's your food bill? And everybody, if you see the news, a lot of people are talking about food bills being really high. I don't know anything about, well, yeah, I don't know anything about shopping for food in in DC. I
Mhm.
had a little bit of experience in Alexandria at one point for after I graduated from Darden, but I have no, and it was pricey in
Mhm.
Alexandria. So I don't know what it is in DC. How do you get around pricey groceries?
Yeah, I mean, it can be pricey, but a good sort of reframe that I always like if I'm ever at a restaurant or even just going into a fast casual place, looking at the prices there, I'm like, oh, you're saving a lot of money if you learn how to cook that yourself at home. So that is something that since moving here, I've spent a lot of time just, really trying to learn as much as possible how to be a good cook for myself and my friends. We all actually, speaking of back to like just kind of the community aspect of living with uh, many roommates, we all have a rotating weekly dinner series. On Sundays, we have a family dinner. We all take turns cooking for each other, and it's usually plant-based, which also keeps it pretty cheap and healthy. So, if you're really looking to, make your dollar stretch, I would say, beans and tofu. are, good for you, both, you're both your body and your wallet. And I would just say like, yeah, like thinking about, what are some things that you like to eat at a restaurant and then, kind of challenging yourself to try and making it at home. I can almost guarantee that you can make it cheaper at home because you don't have to pay for, the rent of the industrial kitchen or for staff or for, front of
Insurance.
house staff. So I find that to be like a fun game of just figuring out, trying to constantly improve my own cooking,
Mhm.
both in terms of
Mhm.
providing for myself and others, and then also just it's just a great skill to have.
Okay, so I just want to ask one more question about your housing situation
Sure.
for people who are listening to you and they're thinking, yeah, but I like my privacy.
Hmm.
I not like, do you have privacy with like multiple roommates?
Yeah. I actually just heard one of my roommates laugh downstairs, but I will say, yes, we do have privacy. And even right now in our current place, we're pretty spread out. But in one of our older houses, there was one of my roommates lived in sort of a, sectioned off area of the main floor. So he had a little bit less privacy, but you kind of, when you're living with people, you kind of work out like, maybe this room has a little bit more privacy than the others. And so maybe that person pays a little bit more in rent. And you can all sort of like figure that out. But in general, I found that like as long as you're able to like effectively communicate with others and establish like clear boundaries, I think that I have not had an issue with privacy. And in fact, I feel like if this might just be me personally, but I feel like if I was in a studio apartment right now, I'd be feeling incredibly lonely. So the sacrifice to privacy for a sense of community is a trade that I'm willing to make at
Mhm.
least.
And your privacy is, I mean, you all have your own rooms and I think
Exactly.
you all have your own bathrooms too, right?
This time in my current house, so the first
Yeah.
house that I lived in, which was much cheaper, no, I shared a bathroom with three people, which takes a little bit of coordination, but
Mhm.
as long as you just kind of adjust your expectations. I lived on the range my last year of at UVA, and so I had to walk outside to go to the take a shower for 2 semesters. So everything is relative.
That's right. That was good training. That was good training. So, all right. Should we talk a little bit more about Comm 2730? Where are we?
Yeah,
So
yeah. One thing that you mentioned previously was about like prioritization. I really would like to hear like how do you think about, prioritizing your next move?
okay. Before I answer that, I want to give a shout out to the late Bob Hardaway and his family. Comm 2730 is a bit of a unique course in multiple ways, but one thing that makes it very unique is it's an endowed course by Bob Hardaway, who is a class of 49 from McIntire, and he and his family still support the course. Or I'm sorry, his family has taken he passed away, and his family continues to support the course. So I want to give them he want to give all of them a shout out. So okay, but priorities. So there's certain concepts that are just constantly they're the foundation of the whole course and of smart decision making, and especially smart financial decision making. And the concept is opportunity cost. So when you're thinking about, whatever you want to do, every choice we make has an opportunity cost, or as we sometimes say, there's no such thing as a free lunch. You make one choice, you give up something else. So if you're going to live in a studio apartment, you're going to give up things. It's going to cost you more. You're going to give up the camaraderie of having roommates and stuff. When you're making financial decisions, if you spend more money on rent, you'll have less money for this other stuff, right? So everything can be weighed in terms of opportunity costs. And I will quote Charlie Munger, the late Charlie Munger, who was Warren Buffett's longtime partner. And he said, intelligent people make decisions based on opportunity costs. no one, you know, everybody knows, or everybody in investing knows how smart Charlie was, and he suffered no fools. And he used opportunity cost to make all of his decisions. And I encourage students to do the same. I encourage everyone in the audience to do the same. If you're looking at two options, think about what you're giving up. Whether it's an investment or whether you're paying off loans, it always comes down to opportunity cost.
All right. Well, I feel like we could just keep going on and on for, several hours, but I know that there are a lot of people who have previously sent in some questions that I'm sure they're eager to have answered. I also know that some people have already put in some questions into the Q&A section on Zoom. And so if you haven't already, it's not too late. You can send in some questions and we'll do our best to answer them. But yeah, Olivia, if you're there, if you have any questions gathered from either before or during this session that we can answer,
Yes,
let's
sir.
go.
Well, thank you, Dot and Connor, for everything that you've done so far. I've been, monitoring the chat backstage with Beth, and we've had some good questions come in there. We don't, unfortunately, don't have time to get to all of the questions that have been pre-submitted and submitted tonight, but I definitely have some good ones for you. And with that, I will ask you our first one, which is, how should we balance contributions to IRAs, 401ks, HSAs, etc.?
I love it. Thank you. And it's perfect to add on to this or build on this concept of opportunity cost. Okay, so you have a choice of, say you have $100 to apply towards your financial goals. Which bucket should you put it in? And you want to look at the opportunity cost. So if you get a match in your 401k, the opportunity cost, that's you get a bonus right there. So if you don't take that, it's going to cost you money because you get that match, right? So that's the first thing. If you get a match, go where the match is. The next thing is, do you get some other kind of benefit like the HSA, I think you said? So an HSA is an automatic tax break. So that's a bonus that increases your return. And I think was student
Roth IRA.
Roth IRA. Roth IRA is great, but you don't get the same tax benefit as you do with the HSA. So I would put that second. In class, I tell students, prioritize by first put in enough to get your match in your 401k. Second, max out the HSA. And third, if you still have money, then you either go back and max out your 401k or go to the Roth IRA.
That's fantastic. I am a big fan of the HSA as a recent grad myself. That is how I buy my cool glasses, because that is an expense that is covered by HSAs that I didn't know until halfway through having one. So yeah, there's my financial tip for the night.
There you go.
But yeah, so then we've had basically a repetition of the same question, but slightly more complex. So then, with all of those different things, how would you balance contributing to all of those wonderful things where you can get matches or tax breaks, or paying down student loan debt or something like that? Where would you see the opportunity cost there?
Okay. Excellent. I'm glad they're thinking, and I'm glad you asked that question. So, say you have debt and you have your financial goals. You're putting 20% towards your financial goals, and you've got these options. One of your financial goals is to pay down your debt. If it's student debt, I know a lot of people are worried about their student debt, and it weighs on them, and they're really anxious to get it paid off. And I want to encourage them to take a breath and just breathe out. Student debt, as long as you're making timely payments, it's okay. All right. The reality is, when you have inflation and you have student debt, you are paying it, and you're paying it out over a long period of time. You are paying it back with inflated dollars. So you really shouldn't be in an enormous hurry to pay off student debt if it's a reasonable interest rate. Okay, you need to know what the interest rate is. That's how you're going to identify that opportunity cost. If it's a less than 8% student loan interest and you have a 401k match of 50%, well, it only makes sense to put the money where you're going to get a 50% return, even if you have to pay 8% interest over here in the other bucket. All right. Now, if you have credit card debt that's charging you 30%, that's a different story. Okay. If your match is 50%, you're still better off with the match. But if you only have a 25% match, and some places only offer 25%, then you have to look at what is my interest rate on that credit card debt versus the match. Pay off your student loans on time, but don't be in a rush if they're less than 8%. Look at the opportunity cost. But if you have credit card debt, I really encourage you to pay that off every single month. Get it back to zero. Okay.
Absolutely. Good advice, of course. You're going to see that a trend with these questions, that a lot of them do come down to opportunity cost. And I think you know that since you've seen them on the back end a little bit before all these
It's
things.
all right.
Yeah.
It's a concept that not even finance people, they know it, but it's hard to live. And sometimes it escapes people. People have a little trouble with it sometimes. It's okay. It's
Well,
a
your
problem.
next opportunity cost question that you've got here, and it's basically the same question, but it keeps getting built on with different conditions. So now instead of, having all of these things plus student loan debt, we're a recent graduate that has sporadic or limited income. So then what's the smartest order of priorities after doing the emergency fund? Roth IRA, high yield savings account, diversified investments, something more niche. That's what they would like to know.
All right, run that by me. Can you run
I'll
by
talk a
me
little
one
bit
more
fast.
time?
Sure. So, if you're earning only sporadic or limited incomes,
Uh-huh.
maybe somebody's only working part-time after
Yeah.
graduation. After you've got your emergency fund set, what should be your next order of priority? Like trying to contribute to a Roth IRA, high yield savings account. What do you think would be the best financial
Well,
priority?
your emergency fund would be a good place for your high yield savings account would be a good place for your emergency fund.
Mhm.
And then I would work on either an HSA, or if you're eligible for an HSA, or the Roth. I'm an enormous fan of HSAs, especially for young people. My feeling is if you do it right, if you plan it and kind of follow the steps, that young people with HSAs now, their HSAs will be a major part of their retirement portfolio when they're older and have higher medical costs and medical bills. And it'll be all tax advantaged. So it's really going to go very, very far. So I'm a huge fan. It's a big component of your overall financial plan.
And if I may, I think that in this scenario, I would think that a Roth IRA would be something to definitely spend a lot of time thinking about because there aren't going to be, if you're only earning sporadic income, then your taxable income for this year is probably going to be relatively low. So this is an opportunity to get, some money into a Roth IRA, which if you're not familiar, Roth IRAs grow completely tax free. So all the money that you have put into a Roth IRA, you've already paid tax when you got it as income. You allow that to you invest it, it compounds over time, and then when you're reach retirement age, when you reach, 59 and a half, you can able to withdraw it, that money's not going to get taxed again. So you're locking in a very low tax rate for right now when hopefully throughout the rest of your working career you're going to have, more steady higher income and you're going to wish, oh, I wish I had maxed out my
Yeah.
Roth IRA back then because that was a great
That
year to do it.
that's an excellent point, Connor. Thanks for clarifying that for everyone. That's really well
You
done.
all think like I did. I took one mandatory personal finance class back in high school, and I found in my notes where I wrote down, get the Roth IRA rather than the other one. And for a long time, I went based on that principle without even really remembering why high school me
Right.
was good to get the Roth IRA, but I trusted her. And, thank you for re-explaining to me what she had heard and what she had internalized. So, yeah, the Roth IRA is a good investment. Alrighty, then, so we've already discussed with for loans, inflation benefits the borrower. You're paying back things with inflated dollars. If the interest rate is lower than what you could get in other places, definitely go wherever your rate of return is best. But someone has asked specifically about paying off federal student loans early and
Mhm.
the benefits and drawbacks of that.
Mhm.
Does them being federal make any difference?
Usually the federal loans have a reasonable interest rate. So, so there are some loans out there that were, and I don't know if they're still available, but for a while there were some loans that were like 9%. And when interest rates were low, and I was aghast basically because the opportunity cost was terrible. I was like, don't take that loan, take a different loan. But again, what you really want to think about, is what else could I do with this money? Paying this off means that I won't have money to put into my HSA, my Roth, my 401k, whatever. And when it's hard when you're just starting out to realize, okay, that say $500 a month payment is a real stretch early and it's a burden and you're like, I want to get rid of this. But as Connor said, when you're young and hopefully you're progressing in your career, by the end, that $500 payment, because you're going to have more income, I hope, and inflation will have reduced the purchasing power of the $500. It won't feel nearly as bad. So don't, I know it, I know you internally you want to end it, but it's not that important. What is important is building your net worth. So your net worth is your assets, everything you own minus your liabilities, everything you owe. So if you're building assets in your 401k, your Roth IRA, your HSA, and your emergency fund, you're building your net worth. And because you're building your assets. Also, you're making timely payments on your student loans so that liabilities are going down at the same time. So focus on building your net worth rather than paying off your debt.
I'm sure a lot of people are really relieved to hear that because student loans, weigh on a lot of people. And to hear, a professional in finance say, it's really not that big a deal as long as you're making the on-time payments. I'm sure that's a relief for a lot of people. The next question is also loan related. This one's a little bit more specific. And that was, as a current medical student, I'd love any advice on how to develop a strategy for repaying approximately $400,000 in student loans once I start residency rather than waiting to become an attending. And it's a two-part question. There's a part after that, but let's go with that first.
Yeah. I don't know a lot about the differences between attending and residency. I do know that I think residents don't make a lot of money. I think they're really, and also we are in a time where it's a little weird with the changes in the Department of Education. There have been public service loans and public service payback programs where if you work in public service, you could make payments based on your income for X amount of years. If you make timely payments and you keep good records, then they will erase the balance of your debt. So we're living in times where I have no idea what's going to happen. So, but you want to avail yourself if that's available and keep good records, really always keep good records. But again, you want to focus on your net worth. And as a resident, as Connor pointed out, your income's going to be low enough and you'll qualify for contributing to a Roth IRA. When you get past that stage, most physicians are not going to be able to contribute to a Roth IRA. So contributing early to that is opening a gate for you that may not be available or probably won't be available in the future. And again, you're going to be paying off that debt with inflated dollars. So even though it weighs on you, try to put it in perspective. I'm building my net worth. I'm building my net worth.
Alrighty. And the second part of that question was, additionally, do you have any recommendations for good travel credit cards, especially for students, and tips on how to maximize their benefits without having a large balance?
I can try to answer this,
Oh,
Mom,
good.
but I'm not a huge credit card churner or a hacker or anything like that. I've found that a lot of it kind of the juice may not be worth the squeeze. But I would say that like for some general like all-purpose credit cards, I think, just looking for things that give a high percent cash back on, categories that you do spend a lot of money on. So whether that's like, dining or flights or groceries or whatever, or gas. And then making sure that it has $0 annual fee because then you can keep it open for a long time. That allows you to build credit, which is going to be a function of how long those like credit cards are open, and you don't want to be paying $95 a month for a credit card that you're not using. So for that, I've found I think I use like the Wells Fargo. Then also I will say we should have mentioned this earlier, but this is all not financial advice. This is all for educational purposes. But I use Wells Fargo has the autograph card, which gives pretty good cash back on any um, travel expenses and dining. So I use that whenever I'm on vacation, and it's good for no foreign transaction fees and stuff like that. I guess if you really are uh, loyal to one airline, maybe look at the airline specific cards. But again, I found that for the most part sometimes the juice may not be worth the squeeze. I try and just get cash back on things that I am already purchasing. Mama, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
Yeah, no, I don't, I know some people play lots of games with their credit cards and things. I don't bother.
Yeah.
Also those high cash back ones, they come at a very high cost to the merchants. And then, yeah, and all those high costs are passed on to all of us. So I'm not a huge fan of playing all those credit card games. Um, you should get what you can. And I am a big fan of no cost credit cards or no fee, because if you decide for whatever reason, because sometimes, I do know a lot of people who travel a lot. And if you travel a lot, some of the expensive ones have great perks. Um, but if you stop traveling, because a lot of people who travel a lot get tired of traveling and then they stop, and then you want to give up that expensive credit card. Uh, if you're young and you give up a credit card, you cancel it, it hurts your credit rating. It doesn't matter who you are. It's when you cancel a card, it's going to hurt your credit score. It's going to ding it a little bit. If you're older and you have a really high credit, it might ding it a little bit. It might not be significant, but when you're younger, it could be significant. And I recommend don't get those kind of credit cards um, if you can avoid them when you're young, until you build a really good credit score on your own. Also, build your own credit score separate from your parents. If you're a young alum and you've been on your parents, it's good to disentangle yourself from your parents' finances.
That's certainly true. I mean, I had a credit card since I was 16 that had my mother on it. We eventually took my mother off of it. I have a really great credit history just because I was just using it for gas and like to get from school and all that. And that was my
Mhm.
whole thought for it, is like I don't spend it on anything but gas to get to and from school. And now,
Mhm.
I have a decade of credit history at this point. Whereas I have a friend who got a credit card this year. We're the same age. He is in a slightly different situation.
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah, that's one of the assignments in classes. Find out, check your credit score. If you've never checked your credit score, make sure you check your credit score. Because sometimes people have debt outstanding that someone took debt out on in their name and they didn't even know about it. And then start building your credit and monitoring your credit so no one can take advantage of you.
Absolutely. Alrighty, so I think that we've already, chipped away at this next question, and you'll know when I say what it actually is. But it's, how do you avoid or unlearn near constant financial anxiety? Which, I mean, as you've said, loans aren't that big a deal, so I think we're already working our way there. And this person says, I'm a perfectly fine position financially, and I know how to manage my finances, but I feel like I'm constantly concerned about buying anything that isn't really a need, and I worry about everything falling apart financially, even though I don't have any debt and I have a fully funded emergency fund.
Well, congratulations and good on you, mate, as they say. That's actually a good problem to have, because yeah, you can work on that. And it's might be a little it might be personally challenging, but it could be less uncomfortable than what other people have to do to get to the position this person's in. Um So there are some life skills or money values and money and life values interviews and surveys you can take to try and help you understand your relationship with money. And I would just say be gentle with yourself and kind to yourself and understanding. It's like it's okay, look at your financial situation, say, okay, I'm on track. I've got 1, 2, 3, and 4, or I've got 1, 2, and 3 is what it sounds like. He's got 1, 2, and 3, or she. And now it's like, okay, I have the ability to enjoy 4. And 1, 2, and 3 is not really sufficient. You should, what you want is number 4, that freedom. And so I hope this person will just engage a little bit more in uh more thoughtful, like, okay, it's okay, I can spend this and do that. I have always been very frugal, and when I was very young, I was very conscious of every penny. And I remember, and this wasn't actually too long ago, but I was chatting with my sister. I had made a mistake. I'd done something, I'd spent money badly, or I don't remember what it was. And I was talking to my sister on the phone. I said, oh, I'm so mad at myself. I did that. And she said, it's okay. She said, you've saved so much money on all these other things all the time. It's okay that you kind of screwed this one up, or, like this one you didn't score big on, or whatever it was. And I was like, yeah, she's right. You can't hit it, can't bat 1,000. Be gentle with yourself. Don't knock yourself.
Absolutely. And having been raised by Doc Kelly, I also am a pretty frugal person. And for a long time, I think I approached money with kind of a real scarcity mindset of, oh, I gotta, just like it's just something that I need to have, and I can't like, uh, there's some like guilt or just like fear about, overspending. And I think that's healthy. It's probably better than the alternative. But I think that the antidote to anxiety is oftentimes action. So like it's great that you already have a fully funded emergency fund. So the next step is, okay, what are some other financial goals I have for myself? Because you should be able to, breathe it, sleep at night, knowing that, I have an emergency fund. If something terrible happens, I'm covered. But now I can think, okay, instead of, worrying about, you know, I have an actual plan for what each incoming dollar is doing, as opposed to just, like hoarding it under the mattress. So, whether that's, I mean, I think we might touch on like, the possibility of like home ownership is kind of often feels very out of reach for our generation. But, if you're like in a great position, then maybe you should like be thinking about like, oh, that's a goal for myself. I want to like build this onto it. I saw a question in the Q&A that I think is a really good foundational question about like what are financial goals? Like, is it retirement? Is it buying a home? Like, how do we set these? I'd be really interested to hear, Mom, your opinion on this.
Mhm.
Because I think it is very personal, right? Just like, some people, if you're, maybe say you're living in New York City and you love New York, maybe home ownership in New York is really not super realistic. But something that could be realistic is, saving up to, take some time off work and like, do some big trip, or, like have like a wedding that you like, the
Mhm.
wedding of your dreams, or like, or retire early or anything like that.
Mhm.
So I think that, having something positive to look forward to makes I feel a lot better when when I'm looking at my income coming in on a monthly basis, I fill out my budget. And the best part is when I'm like, okay, I have all my recurring monthly expenses, and now these are the dollars that I get to put to things that are really exciting to me, whether that be investing or, going to a
Mhm.
concert or whatever. So I think just, you know, thinking about it in that way in terms of what each dollar can do for you is really important. So yeah, Mom, I'd love to hear you talk more about how to
So
set financial
financial
goals.
goals, we talk about them and categorize them in short term, medium term, and long term. So short term is anything you want in within a year. So I want to save for a vacation, or I want to save for a new item I want to buy. So, and that's basically you're going to have to figure out how to make that work in your budget, like save extra money to put in that emergency fund, or and then or that high yield savings account or money market fund. And when you get the money, then you're going to execute on that. Medium term could be 3 to 5 years. And that could be like, I want to buy I want to buy a car, or I want to put a down payment on a house. Maybe it depends. It could be a number of things. But long term, anything over 10 years. And the long term goals, it's really hard to achieve those by saving. You need to invest for those long-term goals. So those are the ones where it's like, okay, I'm going to put money into my Roth IRA and my HSA and my 401k, because I am saving, but I'm investing for my long-term future 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now. And the midterm goals are kind of tough, because the investments, if you invest in the stock market could go down for 3 and 5 years. And you might, if you really need that money within 3 to 5 years, you might need to keep it in a high yield savings account, because you don't want that volatility of the stock market. But with a 10, 20, 30, 40-year goal for your future old age, that goes in the securities markets.
Yeah. And to reiterate the distinction between saving and investing, because this was an issue, this was something that I messed up at first. It's not just about putting money into the Roth IRA or into the HSA or into these accounts. You actually need to invest them, because otherwise, if you can deposit money into a Roth IRA and it's just going to sit until you say, okay, buy the S&P 500, or, buy, international
A target
index or
date
whatever,
fund.
or a target retirement date fund or something like that. So I think I caught it relatively quickly, but occasionally I do think about that first. I was like, I robbed myself of a few extra months perhaps of
Yeah.
compound interest, but
A few months is not that big a deal.
yeah.
Years is when it's years that is a problem. So if you've got your act together before age 30, you're in good shape. The longer it takes people to get control and on the right track, the harder it is. Because that compounding is just magical. So if you can get that compounding working for you when you're 20s, your 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s are going to be a lot more comfortable. But if you wait until 30 and beyond, that first 10 years makes a huge difference. A month or two, couple months doesn't matter. Well, not too much, I should say.
Alrighty. Well, we have a question that's kind of similar in this vein of conversation. We actually have two, and I'm going to combine them into one question. So that is that given ongoing shifts in technology, one person specifically mentioned AI disruptions to like entry-level work and all of that,
Yeah.
the cost and disruptions to cost of living and global markets. What new wealth building approaches might like replace in the old earn, save, buy a home model of things, and how can recent grads identify financially sound, realistic alternatives? Or I will also say, is it still earn, save, invest? As you said, buy a home.
I'm so glad you asked this, and it is perfect, because as we were talking, I thought, oh, and I wanted to talk about housing. So yes, I really want people to think about what matters to them and enjoy their financial well-being. As Connor brought up, people in New York, there's millions of people in New York who will never be homeowners, and who they've lived and died in New York and were never homeowners, and they lived happy lives. Being a homeowner does not make you happy, and not being a homeowner should not be a shame. Okay. Like, just let that go. Connor actually educated me on this great tool from the New York Times, right, Connor, on home rent versus own.
Yeah. There's a lot of great calculators out there. There's one that New York Times did. This was a few years ago. I think NerdWallet has one as well. But if you can like put in like down payment, um, HOA costs, maintenance costs, that's one thing I'd love about renting is I don't have to pay for maintenance. I love telling my landlord to
Fix
fix
the
my oven.
toilet.
Um,
I
and
wish I had
and
a
then
landlord.
how their time frame is going to depend a lot on is going to determine,
Yeah.
whether it's cheaper to rent or buy comparable properties.
Yeah. So I want people to recognize, not everyone recognizes. So residential real estate doesn't have a great long-term return on average. It's like 4% over the long term on average. What makes it better is the tax breaks and the leverage you use with a mortgage. Okay. But compare that to the long-term average return of the stock market, which is 10%, 8 to 12, depending on the any given decade. And, you know, that's much easier. And to be perfectly honest, so in my dad's generation, home ownership was the best tax break available to anybody in the middle class. And now we have Roth IRAs, HSAs, 401ks, 529s. We have all these other accounts that allow you tax advantages, just like a home did for my father and my mom and dad. But now you have these accounts. And the beauty of having money in these accounts is that if you have a bill, you don't have to sell the house to pay a bill. You can't, it's impossible to sell part of your house when you retire. You have to sell the whole house. But if you retire and you want to sell part of your portfolio to do whatever you want or to, pay your bills, you can sell little bits of your portfolio. It is a much it's a more diversified and better a better option for many people. Okay. And I understand home ownership there's a lot of emotional attachment to that. But there's also a lot of work. There's insurance and maintenance and all this. And you are not diversified. You have one big asset. And if that's taking up a majority of your assets and that's your balance sheet, that's not the greatest portfolio, basically, to have one asset. You shouldn't have all of your assets and all of your wealth in one asset. It's not safe.
Yes,
But this is not financial advice.
Yes.
That's my opinion, but it's not financial.
Alrighty, we are getting close to time, so I'm going to throw you all one more just because I think it's a really good one. It did come in with the Q&A, and I mentioned, I got my credit card when I was 16. That was easy because my mom signed on to it, and they're like, yeah, there's an adult supervising this kid. There's somebody else to be liable if she goes crazy with the thing. But when you become an adult, if you don't, have that, or you don't want your parents signed on to your credit card at, the ripe age of 26 years old, what are some suggestions for building credit if you don't already have a credit card? Because it's like the longer it takes for you to get one, it's the harder it seems to be to have good credit, to get a good credit card later, and it becomes this cyclical thing. So what advice do you have on that?
There are no costs, there are no fee and no annual fee credit cards. So what you just want to do is, it doesn't matter where you go. You can go to Target and apply. You need a job before you need to have income. So it's easy even if you have a part-time job, apply for a credit card. They're going to check your employment. I tell my students, go buy some light bulbs or batteries or something at Target or Lowe's, and then go pay the bill right away. And that's your first step. You started the clock running on your building your credit history. And then, every time, whenever you need to use the credit card, use the credit card, but pay it off before the due date, and you will slowly build your credit. It takes time. It takes time. I did it the long, slow way. But it seems long and slow when you're in your 20s. When you get on the other side, you're like, wow, time flies. So it's slow and steady. All of finance, all of financial planning, it's slow and steady. Put yourself on a good path, make a plan for yourself, and start and automate the payments to these various accounts if you can, and slow and steady. And in 20 and 30 years, you'll be like, oh yeah, that compounding worked.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I think we are just completely on time. Thank you all for somehow having this wonderful discussion completely within the bounds of all the times that we set here. And I think that's also a wonderful thing to set, to stop on is, go slow and steady. It's really not as bad as you think it is. Goals that you think might not be in reach are within reach. So I think it's been a very hopeful webinar, which is part of what I was hoping for. And it was certainly better than try negotiating with your landlord. So thank you both. I've learned some things tonight as well. And, we thank you for sharing your thoughts and expertise with us. And you all are free to leave the webinar now. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening. That was fantastic.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Olivia.
Olivia. Thank you.
Alrighty, before we close out today's program, we hope you'll stay connected with NextGen and our future programming, including more webinars like the ones that we did tonight. Please give us a follow on Instagram via the QR code that you see on your screen now. We hope to provide more useful info for all of you in the future and keep you updated about things going on at the university. And then if you're looking for opportunities to connect with other Who's in your area, scan the UVA Clubs QR code to get their website where you can find in-person and online events in your hometown. And don't forget to update your mailing address with UVA when you move so that we can send you information about UVA Club events happening in your area. That is all the time that we have for today. Thank you all for joining us, and go Who's. Bye.